guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be talking about university open days because quite frankly I did not make the most out of my university open days, and so I want this video to show you guys how to make the most out of yours. I'm going to be speaking as if these open days are in person, but a lot of what I'm saying will apply to virtual ones as well, because obviously at the moment a lot of open days will be virtual. So I'm going to start off with some general advice about how to make the most out of your open day, and then I'll move on to some questions that you can ask at the open day as well. So firstly, I would advise that you take at least one other person with you. I wouldn't advise taking the whole family. This is definitely a mistake that I made. However, it's inevitable that you are going to forget things from the open day, so if you've got someone else with you, then it's more likely that as a pair, you will remember most things about the open day. Without sounding really selfish, your open day should be about you, and I find that if you take the whole family, then it becomes more about their needs than yours. So more about, oh, I'm bored, I need to eat at an awkward time. Whereas if you don't take the family, then you can tailor your open day to what you want to do. So how should you plan your day? Firstly, decide what is important to you before you get to the open day. Inevitably, there are always things which are going to overlap, and so if you've got an idea of what you want to do before you get there, then it's so much easier to plan. They also go super quick, so I'd advise getting there early, and then you should have more time to do everything that you want to do, but I always run out of time on an open day. But if you've planned in advance, then once you get the itinerary from the university, it's so much easier to plan what you want to do that day. So a brilliant example of planning effectively is with student finance talks. Now, if you're going to your first university open day, then it could be really useful to go to a student finance talk. However, once you've heard it once, then every university is going to be the same. The only variation I can really think between them is that they might have their own scholarships they talk about in this talk, but all of this information should be online anyway. So for me, once I'd had the student finance talk once and understood it and taken photos to remember, then I moved on. I didn't do that anymore at any other universities, and I had more time to do other things. I personally think it's quite important on an open day to see the city or the area that you'll be living in, but time is going to be tight at the open day, so I would advise doing everything you need to do at the university first and then going into the city or the area after. This way, even if everything's closed, even if it's a Sunday and it's a Sunday evening, you still get an idea about what the city looks like, where everything is, how long it takes to get there. And if you do travel to the nearest city or town or whatever is near the uni, then make sure to take a notice of how far it is away from the university, where the nearest grocery store is, things like this, and it then cuts down on questions that you have to ask later. Now, you can see a surface view of anything online on the university website about your course, about the accommodation, about finance and scholarships, anything like this. But the very best piece of advice I can give you on an open day is to ask students, because you're not going to university to be a staff member, a lecturer or anything like this. You're going to be a student, so you want everything to be from a student perspective as much as possible. This even applies at the moment with virtual open days. So UEA had a section on their virtual open day where you could ask students questions. I actually worked this day, but honestly we are there being paid to answer questions, so just ask us as much as you want and you need. And my last piece of general advice is to take photos. Honestly, you'll think you'll remember everything when you get home. I can promise you won't. It's likely that you'll look around quite a lot of universities and everything kind of merges into one after a while. But if you have photos, then you'll have them to look back at to remind yourself about that university. So take photos of the slides in talks, take photos of the university, and some students will even let you take photos of their room. I had no problem with students last year taking photos of my room on open days. Just make sure to ask first. So now let's move on to some questions that you can ask on open days, because we all know there is nothing worse than getting to an open day and your parents are going, come on, ask questions, and you don't know what to ask. So I'm going to start off with questions that you can ask about your course, and there are some questions which you can ask staff, but most of the time, as I said, you want to be asking students. So for each subheading, I'm going to split these questions up into questions for staff and questions for students. So the things that you want to be asking staff members is the surface level factual information. For your course, this could be things like how many contact hours are there, what is the ratio of lectures to seminars or placement, how independent is the course, can I do a year abroad, and how is the course assessed? Is it mainly coursework, is it exam? How many students are there usually on this course, and what have recent graduates gone on to do? Then there are questions which you really want to be asking students. So, for example, for your course, you can ask things like, how good is the library? And this might sound like a really nerdy question, but actually it's really important when you're at university to have a good library. Then there's questions such as, are your lecturers enthusiastic? Have you enjoyed your course so far? And if not, what would you change? Are students actively involved in the decision making about the course? And is there a society for your course? And if so, how active is it? Now, I've been on both ends of university accommodation tours, both as a prospective student before I started university and also working last year as an accommodation representative. And honestly, it makes our shifts go so much quicker and it's so much more enjoyable when people ask questions. And I don't just mean the worried parents asking questions, of course this is really important, but essentially it's the students who are going to be living here. We want to answer your questions. So of course throughout the day you might have an opportunity to ask second or third or even fourth year students about their accommodation, but these questions will be aimed at when you're on the university accommodation tours that you can ask the first years. So again, with accommodation there are surface level things which you can ask staff members, such as how much is this accommodation and where does it sit in terms of the price range of the other accommodation? Is there insurance for the room and are bills included? But as always, there are things which you're going to want to be asking students. So firstly, would you say your accommodation is good value for money? If things have gone wrong, have they been sorted quickly and easily? Have you been able to sleep and study well in this accommodation? If you have university security, how good have they been? If you had the choice again, would you decide to live in this accommodation again? What have been the advantages and the disadvantages of living here so far? Therefore, would you say your priorities in looking for accommodation have changed? I ask this because when I personally moved in, my priorities were to have a nice room, an oven, a nice big kitchen, things like this. But once I moved in, I realised actually it's so much more important to have a good group of friends and a support bubble. If you share facilities in your accommodation, would you honestly say that most of the time you've been able to use them when you need to? Where is the nearest supermarket? And do you feel safe and settled in this accommodation? And how much responsibility do you have, such as cleaning or taking the bins out? These are really small things that I wouldn't even have thought to ask on an open day. So let's move on to finance, and again there are things which you can ask staff members, such as are there scholarships available and how often is the student finance paid? But then again there are things which you want to be asking students, such as how easy is it to get a job on or off campus? Would you honestly say that you could live off of your student loan? And what budgeting advice would you give? Lastly, how much did Freshers Week cost you? Because honestly, I underestimated that. Then there are things which you want to be asking about the surrounding area, which I personally would aim at students. So to start off with, how cheap and easy is it to get into the town or city centre? Do you feel safe on a night out, and can you have a good night out in this place? Are there a range of things to do there other than just clubbing? And is it affordable to eat out? And then there's questions about student life generally. And a few of these things you can ask staff members, such as can you take a car and how expensive is it to do so? For example, are there weekly parking permits? But most of these things you're going to want to aim at students. So to start off with, how good are the facilities, such as the library and the gym and things like this? Secondly, if you've experienced it, how good is the student support at the university? Is it easy to make friends, and what's the best way to make friends? And how long would you say that it honestly took you to settle in? Lastly, you could ask what you can be doing other than your course. So you could say, here are my interests. Are there any clubs or societies that I could join? Is there any extracurricular that I could be doing from the uni? So for example, if you like learning languages, then at UEA there are societies, there are evening courses that you could be doing to enhance your language skills. I really hope that video has been helpful because I did not make the most out of my university open days and I don't want you guys to make the same mistake. So take on board the planning and the questions and you should have a good day. And if any of you are planning on coming to UEA or an open day at UEA, virtually or in person, then let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe as always.